performance driven. So you have revenue goals in mind, you have conversion goals in mind, you really are focused on bringing results into your program. Experimentation to me is more like decision making and decision science, where you want to validate ideas, you want to understand, okay, what is the risk involved of me trying this new thing and bringing out to the mass market? Is this a good decision or is this a bad decision?
Hi, Tracy. Welcome to the Experimentation podcast.
Hey, Suchita. I'm new around here. I've never heard of this podcast before. Where am I?
So, for our listeners, Tracy is usually our host, but today she is my guest. And I've got some exciting questions and exciting things to ask. But before we get started, Tracy, for the few people listening that don't know you, do you want to make a quick introduction, please?
Sure. Great intro, by the way. Thank you. I feel strange being interviewed on this show instead of doing the interviewing, but I'm Tracy. You might recognize me from other Experimentation episodes. I am a CRO strategist. I have been in the space for about 3.5 years, just doing all kinds of different things. I've worked in-house, I've worked agency, and now I am a freelance consultant. So I love it. And I specifically am really excited about this episode because there are a lot of new entrants to the space. And I remember my first year was very chaotic, very anxiety inducing. And if I can make that even the tiniest bit better for one person, then I can sleep well at night.
That's amazing. And paying it forward is always a good feeling for everyone involved. And like you said, there are a lot of people joining the space very excitedly. I had a call with some students from Carnegie Mellon who are intrigued about what is CRO and what is happening. And they've built out this AI tool and wanted to get it tested and wanted to know so much.
Yes.
So there's so much excitement and buzz about CRO, and it's a growing space. And it's definitely nice to get more and more people and build a community like Experimentation. So without getting too far off topic, let's get right into it.
All right.
So my first question for you is, let's talk about the words, right? There is CRO, there's conversion rate optimization, there's just optimization, there's experimentation. Are these words used interchangeably, or do we use them interchangeably but they mean different things? How would you explain this to somebody?
Yeah, I think that people get really hung up on the words, but there are some differences in my mind on CRO versus experimentation. Now, I'm going to start with CRO. I really don't care if it's called conversion rate optimization, conversion optimization. I think any CRO practitioner who, is good at the craft recognizes that there's more to CRO than just conversion rate. So I do not care if it's called CRO, DXO, like so many acronyms. I don't care. I'm going to call it what my clients are searching for when they're looking for a practitioner. Now, between CRO and experimentation, I am of the mindset that CRO is a bit more performance driven. So you have revenue goals in mind, you have conversion goals in mind, you really are focused on bringing results into your program. Experimentation to me is more like decision making and decision science, where you want to validate ideas, you want to understand, okay, what is the risk involved of me trying this new thing and bringing out to the mass market? Is this a good decision or is this a bad decision? So less focused on bringing results. Still, that's a big part of it, but it's more like about making better decisions. So that to me is the big distinction. I sometimes use the terms interchangeably. It depends on my audience as well. There are some cultural differences too, I've noticed. So the European market, is more experimentation, and the North American market is a bit more CRO. The rest of the world, I don't know what's going on there, but there's just little differences. I wouldn't say that they're the same thing, but they do have a lot of overlap.
Yeah, that makes sense. For me, in my head, experimentation is almost a like under CRO is the umbrella term, and then experimentation is one of the ways you achieve optimization.
That
Right.
as well. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Optimization is kind of in service of better, better, better. And
hmm
experimentation is more about learning and, yeah, just really thinking through and questioning your assumptions.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So after learning about these differences and some similarities, how does one go about finding their first job in CRO? And because that's very broad, let's talk about is agency versus an in-house role versus freelancing when you're just starting out.
Yeah. This is something that you and I have talked about in
Quite
like
a bit, yes.
quite a bit. And I love this question. I get asked it a lot. Ultimately, to get that first job, it is the hardest one to get. And I want to preface by saying the last time I had to seek a job, like an employment situation, was 2 years ago. And it was in a much different job market. So, for any listeners who are struggling to find a job, period, right now, it is a really bad time. And I recognize that. So, it might take a bit more work than what it took for me to land that first job.
Mm-hmm.
So, the way that I kind of navigated that was my first CRO job, I was doing it without realizing it. So, I was in a growth manager job at a startup, and CRO was a part of my role. Now, would I have done that today? Absolutely not. It's very difficult to grow a business when you're spread so thin. And today, I don't believe that CRO is one checkbox that you add on to a job description. It's not a line in a job description. It is an entire function. It is an entire team. So that was my start. It was just doing it, not realizing. And then I wanted to learn more about it. I got curious. I started taking the CXL CRO mini degree. I started reading books about CRO, and my employers realized, oh, Tracy really has an aptitude for this, and it's where she's currently bringing results in her job.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. If you'd like to connect with hundreds of experimenters from around the world, consider joining our Slack channel. You can find the link in the description. Now back to the episode.
So they shifted me into a CRO manager role. Now, I didn't stay in the role for long. There were a lot of factors, such as the team just didn't really have the resources for me to be able to be effective at the role. So from there, I said, okay, I am going to do everything I can to learn from my network around me. At that time, Romel Santiago, the founder of Experimentation,
Whoop, whoop.
hell yeah, Romel, I know Romel's going to hear this. He reached out to me and we just started talking, and he asked if I wanted to be a part of the podcast. So I started hosting this podcast. Some of the first episodes were me in my first few months of CRO. I used it as an opportunity to reach out to the people in my network who were really good at the craft already, so that I can ask them all the questions that I was struggling with on the job, or that peers were struggling with. So taking that opportunity, I was really lucky that it led me to get my second CRO job, and to also be able to advocate for the highest compensation in the salary band, because they saw that I was eager. They saw that I was putting myself out there, and that I am a serious person in this community. I'm not as serious today, but we'll get to that in a bit, I'm sure. So that second job, it was great. It was another in-house role, but I realized I don't think I'm cut out for in-house optimization. It's just it didn't satisfy my need for different types of work, for variety, for different challenges every day. And there also weren't the appropriate resources for the role. It was very difficult to bring results, especially when the broader team just didn't really take the work seriously. So from there, I said, okay, something isn't working for me here. I think it's that I want to eventually go into business for myself, but my skills just aren't at a place where I feel like I'm ready to work with clients and do this full time on my own. So I went agency. And I'm so glad I did. I actually wish I did it in reverse. I wish I started agency first. And this is something that even you and I have talked about, because you started in-house and it sounds like you have similar challenges to me as well. So there's just, with agency, you can learn really fast. You are exposed to so many different types of work and challenges, and it levels you up really, really, really fast. So I did that for a bit over a year. I felt like, okay, I like working with clients. So I want to go into this on my own. I started to have a lot of confidence in my skills, and that's what I did. I went off on my own. That's not the path for everyone, and that's totally okay. Some people like in-house. Some people just don't want to be an entrepreneur or be on the hook for their own like job security, and that's okay. I just really had to do some trial and error to figure it out, and in a way, I experimented my way through these learnings. And that's just part of it.
That makes a lot of sense. And like you mentioned, we've talked about this before. I started off my CR journey in in-house roles as well.
Yeah.
And as much as there is this excitement to learn and figure things out on your own, I think that eventually you reach a ceiling, and you do need to work with people who've done this before, who've been around in the business for longer, so you can actually get real-time experience. There's only so much courses can teach you. They're a good starting
Yes.
point, but there's nothing that can replace being on the job and doing things, breaking things.
Yes.
That's been huge. Like having the option to break things. And the other thing with in-house roles is prioritization and
Yes.
resourcing. That's been my biggest struggle with in-house CR roles. So
Yes.
if listeners are just getting into this, my recommendation is go down the agency path as well. And I've heard that there's never a dull moment, and
Yes.
there's so many different clients to work with, and you really get a feel for the CRO high, which I've heard of, and it's exciting, but I'm yet to experience, I'll be honest.
The CRO high.
Yes.
It's
It's
weird.
the, yeah,
Yeah. I've never heard of that, but I know exactly what that is because I've
yes.
definitely had the CRO high.
Yeah, it's just the basis of CRO is the constant testing,
Yes.
failing, the speed of it,
Yes.
which is what makes a really good program. So if there's not enough speed, it kind of falls apart. So that's a good thing to
Yes.
watch out for as well. That
Yeah.
shows for an effective program.
It's a good call out because that momentum is so hard to get. And it does, for me, take a couple months to get to that momentum. And I've only been able to get that through agency work. And there are clients who I've worked with through agency where we never really hit that stride. But the fact is, the more opportunities that you have, the more chance you have that you are going to have those really successful engagements. So
Hmm.
the more experience you can get, the better in the long run.
Yeah, that makes sense. Which to get into a role of an experimenter, are there any tips on creating an experimenter brand?
Ooh, yeah. So I accidentally created, I guess, an experimental brand. I don't know what it
Let's
is.
reverse engineer.
Yeah, sure. So I would not say that I have a strong personal brand. I am not consistent online, and I haven't really put all that much thought toward how I present myself as an experimenter online. I mostly post on LinkedIn, and just being out there in a small field brings opportunities without really having to try. Now that was my experience. I today am I'm like not a very serious person online. I kind of poke fun at the LinkedIn vibe and the people around me who just take things so seriously, and I post crap all the time. That's not for everyone, but for some people it's really relatable and it really resonates. So I think it's important when you're getting into this field, you don't have to be a thought leader in the sense of, I'm smart, here's what I learned, let me educate you. It's okay when you're starting out to be like, okay, I am going to be a vehicle for other people to learn with me. So I did that with Experiment Nation's podcast. I was interviewing people who have been in the space for like over a decade, and just naturally it was building my network, it was giving me exposure, and I wasn't really educating. It was me giving a platform for people who can educate, for the people who want that education. So I do think to some extent it is really important to be out there, put yourself out there, be fearless online, and you don't have to be so serious about it. It's okay to just be yourself and exist, and someone will be drawn to it, and that someone may be the person who lands you your next job or gives you that experience that's gonna lead you to your dream, as cheesy as that sounds.
Yeah. I think I've seen LinkedIn, I think, especially post COVID, because
Yeah.
a lot of people work from home full time now. The office life and the home life have pretty much blended. So your
Mm-hmm.
surroundings are not separate really.
Yeah.
So people's personalities have just bled into LinkedIn. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that because you don't need to pretend to be somebody else at work. And of course, there are certain things which are you don't bring to work, but outside of that it's nice to not constantly have to switch in and out of these personalities, right?
Yes.
On a day-to-day basis, because you're at work maybe 40-50 hours a week, and that's exhausting. So it's nice to
Totally.
just mostly bring your whole self to work.
Totally. And that also applies to your like on the job practice and
Yeah.
persona. In my first maybe 2 years of doing this, I was so serious. I took everything so personally, and I struggled to get people behind my ideas. I just didn't choose the right battles, and I got hung up on things that, yeah, didn't matter. If someone doesn't want to go for a specific piece of advice that I have, it's okay. Like, I told you so. Like, if it goes wrong, like, you don't say I told you so, but like, I can sleep at night knowing I at least gave my best advice, and I don't need to get my way all the time. So I kind of take that level of like, I just don't care as much about the little things anymore. I just am here to help, and I show up as myself, and I don't sweat it if all these factors aren't right, or if for some reason I'm not testing exactly the way that the CXL course taught me, or how so and so on LinkedIn says I should be testing. These things don't really matter at the end of the day. You do your best, and you get paid, and then you go home and just hope for the best.
that's that's great advice. Which brings me to, how do you keep up with the changes that take place literally every day? I'm constantly feeling like I'm playing catch up and I haven't figured this new thing out that's now on LinkedIn, and I have to go research it, and then again next day the same thing.
Yeah.
So how do you think it's just people trying to create content to stay relevant, or there's actually new developments happening at that rate? How do you go about it?
Yeah. I There's a lot of noise out there, and a lot of people have their own objectives and messages and agendas, and ultimately, I can look online and see someone's going to say CRO is dead tomorrow. And I'm going to be like, okay, well, I've been hearing this for 2 years now. So if I saw that and said, okay, my job is on the line, CRO is dead, what am I going to do? Then I would have missed out on so many of the great opportunities that I've had being in this field since. So part of it is, I think, just there's a lot of noise out there. It's hard to tell what is serious and what you need to act on. There's a new acronym every day for CRO, DXO. Like, there's just, it makes your head spin. I try not to worry too much about these like flash in the pan things, these seemingly important changes that pop up overnight and then next week it's not even a thing anymore. But if I'm noticing there are things out there that are new ways of doing, new tools that are actually going to help me in my practice, then I will level up on them. Things like AI, I think AI is a bit overrated. I hope that this doesn't age poorly, but there are parts of AI that I use every day in my practice, but I am by no means like a master in it, because I don't feel like I need it to move forward with this practice. The fundamentals and the foundations at the end of the day are, to me, the most important thing. And if you get that right, you can weather any storm. And at the end of the day, also, if CRO dies tomorrow, then I have bigger problems. It's not because I didn't level up. It's because there was a huge shift in the market. Maybe I didn't adapt to it accordingly, but it's important to have confidence in your skill set and your expertise and be able to adapt and move on. Maybe that's horrible advice. I don't know. There's probably a lot of like AI bros who are like, girl, your job is just like, we're coming for your job. The robots are going to take you over. And I'm still waiting for AI to take my job, because I'm still working.
Yeah. That's fine. I think I'm not going to keep waiting for it to happen. If it has to happen, it can happen. I don't think I'm going to live in fear of AI taking my job, because then I would have lost out on living those very good days and months and years.
Yes.
So if it has to happen, it's going to happen, right?
Yes.
So that's fine.
It's so hard to be future proof when you don't know what the future looks like. And on kind of, that's actually also a positive, because your next talent may not exist yet. So, why are you going to freak out about it? Again, maybe horrible advice, I don't know, but I used to live like I need to be ahead of the curve at all times. I need to be Miss Know-It-All, and that's just not me anymore. I just want to make sure that if the future does come and it doesn't look favorable for me, that I can bounce back quickly with what I've already picked up along the way.
Yeah, and CRO is one of those things that makes you very adaptable, because you're constantly testing, and 95% of the times you're failing, and not failing as in your tests are failing, but you're learning.
Yes.
And then you have to adapt to next steps, and so you can have a great roadmap, but it's constantly changing.
Yes, 100%.
So
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah, so it gives you good enough skills to, even if CRO is dead, if something dies, something else gets planted in its place and grows.
Yes.
So if CRO dies, it gave us enough to do the next best thing that's that's available.
Totally. And I studied a dying industry. I studied print.
Oh wow.
I don't do print. I don't do packaging, but through that experience doing experiments in a lab setting, literally watching ink dry on paper, that's something that led me to CRO. So, if you're looking at your life as hopefully decades of learning and new experiences, CRO might be this tiny little blip on that timeline for me. It could be a huge chapter. It could be the whole book. I don't know. But just having the confidence to say whatever happens, happens is admirable in my view.
That makes sense. Everything leads to something, and
Yes.
no experience goes, no experience is a waste.
Yes.
And
Totally.
it's kind of hard to always tell how something's going to impact you.
Yeah.
But it's there. Even if whether you see it or not see it, it's there
Yes.
for sure.
Yes.
Yeah. Um, so this is a bit of a segue, but do you have any resource recommendations or books? And if they're books or articles, I definitely want to also list it down below. But just talk about your maybe top two, top three, CRO specific, and then maybe something else as well.
For sure. Yeah. Um, if you had to choose one book to get started or have be like your Bible of CRO, it would be Making Websites Win. I forget both of the authors' names, but I'm sure we can drop
We
it
can
in like
list it.
the
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely.
So phenomenal book. Design for Impact is another one that I just picked up by Aaron Weigel. So good so far. Just a lot of the foundational type books will go a long way, especially in your first year. In as far as tools go, I still to this day always use the CXL A/B testing calculator. I think it's now owned by Spiro, but they make it so easy to just understand the impacts of just day-to-day performance and be able to put it into context for stakeholders who need a bit more educating. So that resource as well. Spiro has a lot of phenomenal blueprints. So definitely download those, put them on your desktop for checking out later. And Experimentation's podcast. Of course, I'm a bit biased, but you have so many different people coming on to speak about so many different experimentation related topics that you're going to find a gem somewhere.
Thank you. And experimentation honestly has been so great for me as well. I met you.
Yes.
I've had some incredible conversations with people. They're from product or they're from marketing. And everyone's so willing to help. And I've never had something like this in my professional career before, where there's a full blown community where I think up to almost
Yes.
700 people globally. We try to meet once a week and do something called CRO therapy, where we
Yes.
hash out work related situations or hard times, and that's so unique.
Yes.
And I mean, shout out to Experimentation and Rommel for setting something up, and also people who have taken on the baton from him, so it doesn't feel like it's everything's on his shoulders. So I really really
Yes.
appreciate that about the community.
Yes. The Slack community,
Yes.
especially. I've picked up clients from the community. I've had jobs from the community. I've made friends from it. Like, just so valuable. And it's an honor to have been one of the first members of the Slack group because I've been able to see it grow into what it is today. So definitely shameless plug for the Slack group too.
That's so nice, right? To see it. You're one of the first few people, and then you see we're almost to 700. That must be so nice.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. uh, Myth busting time.
Sure.
Because there's so much noise, like we talked about, there's a lot of things being said about experimentation. And because like I said, there's no formal education, it's still growing. So there's a lot of trial and error, even within what a successful CRO program looks like, right? So anything that you've heard, that you see people talking about a lot, but actually it's total BS.
Ooh, ooh. I'm gonna need a second. Okay. This one's going to be potentially an unpopular one. There's going to be people listening to this who are like, yes, yes, I'm so glad someone said it. And then other people who are going to feel like a little called out. it's not a myth per se, but it's kind of this trend of content online that's like, oh, here's a bunch of A/B tests that made my clients millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars. And the reason why I say it's kind of bullshit is because, first, it creates this kind of atmosphere of, well, I did it and it worked. So if you take my idea, my random LinkedIn post, you're going to make your clients millions of dollars. And that is just not the case. It misses out on so much context. Like, your customer is different for every program that you run. Your circumstances, your business model, it's all different. So what works for one brand doesn't work for another necessarily. And same with that, I do notice that a lot of this content really over exaggerates the results. So I've seen behind the scenes, under the hood, in the actual test results for some tests that are featured in massive case studies as like, oh, we made our client hundreds of thousands of dollars a month with this one test. And you look at it and you're like, okay, this is actual total bullshit. This was actually a super flat result and you just kind of blew it up. So I think people need to be so much more discerning about the kind of like hacks that they see on LinkedIn, the like, download this guide, download this swipe file to see what works. It's very good for engagement, but it's very dangerous for the junior CRO who takes it as gospel.
That makes a lot of sense. And context is key for everything.
Yes.
Different clients, different size of your audience. Are you a
Yes.
web-based product? Where do you market? Where there are just so many
Yes.
caveats.
Yes.
And the other one for me is just focusing on the data a lot and without using human intervention
Yes.
or common sense,
Yes.
and making decisions just based on what the numbers say. I mean, the
Yes.
numbers, you can make the numbers say whatever you want it to say.
Yes.
And different people can interpret it differently and spin a story that is convenient
Yes.
rather than that's good for the business, right?
Totally.
So,
yeah. CRO is a fantastic career path for con artists because you can tell any story that you want in any test result, but I always appreciate the optimizers who will be skeptical about the results. They'll kind of give you the disclaimers about this may not be totally conclusive, and also the optimizers who tell you what led to the idea and what came after. Just we like to think of the whole like CRO cycle as, okay, the testing and the analyzing part, but there's all this other there's all these other steps that go into it that are like, okay, well, good ideas come from somewhere, and the deeper you understand the end user, usually the better the result and the better the learnings, and the longer term the program, the stronger the commitment from the people who have to buy into the program. So I love that you brought that up because it's so true.
My other pet peeve is people who love to use only the terms, right? Is this statistically significant?
Yes.
And that usually this is sometimes in a B2B context, where we don't have enough traffic. No matter how hard we try, we can run it for 6 months and we're still not going to reach statistical significance. Qualitative data and quantitative data can be married quite well to move you in a desired direction. So I feel like qualitative data is really underutilized in situations where there's not enough quantitative data available.
Yes, 100%. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Okay, so why do you love experimentation?
I think about this a lot. I have ADHD, so I'm very distracted. I love to learn new things. I'm very good at picking up new skills. I'm bad at committing to them, but CRO and experimentation are career paths that are well suited to people like me, people who want to learn a lot of different things, learn a little bit about a lot. And every day has a different challenge. So that satisfies my need for variety and novelty. It satisfies my hyper fixations and hyper focus, because I'll do analyses and be so curious about what I'm seeing that I will lose hours just finding new problems to solve, or learning things that my clients are like, oh my God, I had no idea this is what was going on. And it completely changes how they think. Those things are, yeah, very well suited to people who have ADHD. So I think that's a huge part of it.
I think showing ADHD in a positive light is so huge,
Yeah.
because I know of so many people who struggle with it,
Yeah.
and they struggle in different areas of their life, and it's on a daily basis, right?
Yes.
So you knowing that and using that to your advantage, because there's no point in fighting it, that's amazing. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing that with our listeners.
Of course.
I meant to ask you this earlier, but are there certain contexts where CRO doesn't make sense for certain levels of businesses or types or industries, anything of that sort, where there's a level of maturity required? And what does that maturity look like?
Mm-hmm. I th- I think there is some truth to that, but I want to draw a distinction between CRO as A/B testing versus CRO as qualitative research, quantitative research. You don't need more than 10 users in a user test. That's research. You don't need you just need some customers to be able to run customer interviews. So there's a lot of, oh, like we don't have the sample sizes. Well, do you not have the sample sizes for A/B testing? Okay, that's fine. You can still do CRO. I think it's CRO and experimentation is for everybody. It's not just for web-based businesses. It's for like on like stores, really in person. I think about shops near me and I'm like, you could heat map foot traffic in a store. You can apply those concepts of CRO. You can interview your customers. You can just take that digitally and put it into an in-person experience, and you don't need to A/B test. So I think CRO is for everyone. It's just what parts of it are you defining as CRO? Because if it's just through the lens of A/B tests, then no, it's not necessarily for everyone. Not everyone would agree with that, and that's okay. There are people on the other end of the spectrum who say CRO is, or A/B testing is only for people who, or websites who have like millions of visitors in a given period, which I also disagree with. So yeah, I mean, it's for everyone, really.
Yeah, I think A/B test is the most common term that pops up when CRO is being discussed.
Yeah.
So almost seems like that's the biggest part of it, or that's the only way to do it. But clearly, that's not the case. But that's a whole other episode.
Yes.
So how can our listeners get a hold of you as we come to an end of this amazing episode?
Aw.
Because we have to keep in touch with you, we have to follow you, we have to talk to you. So tell us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, you can reach me on LinkedIn. Just search up Tracy Laranjo. If you see an orange emoji in my name, that's me. That's my last name literally means orange in Portuguese. So you can find me there. Or if you want to work with me, you need a consultant or someone to just help you kickstart your CRO program. Maybe you're an agency owner who needs a really good CRO strategist. You can reach me at hello@tracylaranjo.com.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I've had the pleasure of talking to Tracy online and offline. So definitely get in touch with her. She's a great person to chat about all
Thank you,
things
Suchita.
CRO and non-CRO things as well, if that's your jam.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Tracy. Look out for another episode from us soon.
Hi, this is Romo Santiago from Experimentation. If you'd like to connect with hundreds of experimenters from around the world, consider joining our Slack channel. You can find the link in the description. Now back to the episode.